Earlier this year, Deadpool and Wolverine defeated Joker to become the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. And then a couple months later, Joker 2 came out and, well, it was not in competition to be the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. But it got me thinking, what are the 10 highest grossing R-rated movies of all time? And I gotta do what I gotta do. So today we're gonna stop and rank the 10 highest grossing R-rated movies of all time from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of the 10 highest grossing movies of all time. For this list, I actually had to cheat just a little bit because 9 of the 10 highest grossing movies of all time are Hollywood movies that I've seen many, many times. And then one of them is a Chinese film called Detective Chinatown 3 that actually came out in 2021 when the world was still kind of locked down, and it went on to still become one of the highest grossing R-rated movies of all time. I have not seen that movie, and I suspect most of my viewers have not either, so I excluded that one so that we really are looking at the 10 highest grossing Hollywood R-rated movies of all time. As always with these, my list is not the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. I'm sure on the screen I'm posting the list of the 10 highest grossing R-rated movies of all time. And let's get started. In last place, The Hangover Part II. The original film was such a refreshing, new, R-rated comedy with a set of characters you liked spending time with while they behaved badly, and it made a ton of money, so naturally they wanted to make a sequel, and we got The Hangover 2, which is just like a classic example of a copy and paste sequel, where they just turn the original movie into a template or a Mad Lib in rinse and repeat. During a wild bachelor party in insert wild city, the insert member of the bridal party goes missing, and everyone can't remember the night before. The friends spend the day looking for their friend, only to realize they're mixed up in some kind of criminal activity investigation. Just in time, the person from the bridal party is found when they remember an event from the previous night that locked the person in the hotel. In the end, they make it back to the wedding and discover a device with the pictures where they see what happened the night before. Like, it's the exact same thing, just it's certainly not as fresh. And I felt it was just meaner and nastier. Like, there's parts where like chicken heads are getting cut off and blood spraying in their faces. And so all of just the natural fun of hanging out with these characters turns into, let's just find an excuse to do it one more time in grosser ways. So for me, this is one of the most like disappointing comedy sequels of all time, because there was so much excitement going into it, and then you left it being like, if I'm in the mood for a hangover movie, I'm just going to rewatch the other one for like the 10th time. I don't need to see that again. Even ends on this really, really weird message with Stu giving a speech, and it, like about how he's actually really wild and misbehaves and does crazy stuff. And it's supposed to be like positive, but it's actually bad behavior. So just a movie that both isn't good, it's a rinse and repeat sequel, and like I think it's self-important, makes a weird point to end on. Number 9, The Matrix Reloaded. Now, I was the perfect age for the original Matrix to be a formative movie for me, that by the time this film came out, it was one of my most anticipated movies of all time. And this film is just such an odd mix of good ideas, bad ideas, clever ideas, pretentious ideas, great special effects, awful special effects. It's got a little bit of everything in there. And certain elements of the main plot line about trying to get the Keymaster and is kind of interesting. You're like, okay, yeah, right. We're fighting back, trying to defeat the machines. But then it gets so lost in all of these subplots, philosophical diatribes, and at times just confusing storytelling. And the movie will spend 30 minutes like this massive sequence on capturing the Keymaster, huge fights, a chase that they spend millions and millions of dollars on it, this freeway sequence. And then it it montages through the third act. It like what they actually do with the Keymaster, it's done with voiceover, and it's like just showing the images while we're explaining what's going to happen. We just got to skip over it. Like, what just happened there? They just skipped over it. Like they cut this 30-minute sequence down into like a 5-minute montage. It's very, very weird the way that it plays out, and it makes it into a film that has tons of action, but is also very, very exposition heavy. And the movie culminates with the sequence with the architect, with the most ludicrous and verbose exposition dump in cinematic history. And it's a movie that deconstructs its own mythology, where everything that you loved about the first movie, its treatment of the chosen one and those archetypes, that's blending of Christianity and Buddhist philosophy all into one. And then in a single sequence, it deconstructs all of it in this way that it's like, oh, I don't even know what to care about anymore. What does any of this matter? Did you just make the first movie worse? Why did you do that? So there's so many things in this one that are good, they're bad, they're all over the place. Things I love about it, I love that it's wild and takes swings and it doesn't play it safe. And I hate that it didn't play it safe and deconstructed all the stuff that I love. So I'm still processing this movie 21 years later. Today's video is sponsored by Uncommon Goods. Spark something uncommon this holiday with the right gift from Uncommon Goods. The holiday season is upon us. Just this past weekend, my family fired up the Mariah Carey, pulled down the Halloween decorations, and started putting out our Christmas decorations. Uncommon Goods makes it less stressful with incredible hand-picked gifts for everyone on your list, all in one spot. Gifts that spark joy, wonder, delight, and that it's exactly what I wanted feeling. So like for my wife, I picked up one of these retro picture viewers. Comes with a redemption code where I'll be able to submit a bunch of pictures of our kids, our family, our dogs, me, and then they'll send me picture wheels to have a little nostalgic fun playing with an item from her childhood, except remembering our family and this pretty face. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the US. They have the most meaningful, out of the ordinary gifts. And that's the cool thing. It's not the same stuff you see everywhere else. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give back $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3 million to date. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/Sean Chandler. That's uncommongoods.com/Sean Chandler for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary. Number 8, Deadpool 2. To be perfectly clear, I like this movie. Give it a positive review. When you're doing a list like this about the most popular R-rated movies of all time, they're the most popular R-rated movies of all time, generally speaking, for a reason that a lot of people liked them and went to go see them, or they were the sequel to very popular films. So I like this movie. So even as number 8, I'm positive on this film. This is a movie that goes for it, where it just takes every idea, every joke that they had, that they brainstormed, and they just throw it at the screen and they go for it, where it is filled with entertainment, but it is probably overstuffed with plot lines. We've got a tragedy, we've got an X-Men story, we've got a prison movie, we've got an X-Force movie, we've got an evil school. Oh yeah, by the way, it's a time travel movie about Cable. There's a lot in this movie. And I don't have an issue with any one plot line in the film. I just think that they crammed too much into it, so none of them are fully developed, and it strains cohesiveness at many points in time with so much stuff happening. But I think it's all entertaining. There's still cool action set pieces. It's fun to see Cable. Josh Brolin is fun to see on screen. Of course, Ryan Reynolds is very charming, charismatic in the role. I think this film is not a little bit. This movie's a victim of too quick of a turnaround, where first one came out in February 2016, very popular film. They went, let's do another one. Let's strike while the iron is hot. And so it comes out 2 years and just a few months later. That's a quick turnaround for a project that was so popular. It has been done. Spider-Man 2 came out 2 years after Spider-Man 1. But when you have that short of a turnaround, you just kind of have to pick a path and go down it. You don't have a lot of time to slow, quick cook it and rework it. You got to just pick a path and make it happen. And in the case of this movie, There were creative differences. Tim Miller, director of the first film, cut ties, went off and did his own thing, and they had to bring a new director in. So they even had bumps in the creative process that slowed things down. And when you do that, when you have to microwave the script, you don't have the time to pick the best plot lines, or you don't have time to do all these plot lines and seamlessly merge them together. And I think that's what you see with this movie. There's a lot of good ideas. There's a lot of fun ideas. There's a lot of jokes that land, but it's pretty bumpy and messy. And it feels like we are like hopping from plot to tone the entire journey. Enjoy the film. Just wish they had given it a 3-year turnaround, given them the time just to iron out all those kinks in the script. Next up, Deadpool and Wolverine. Once again, like I just said, just because it's number 7 on this list doesn't mean I don't like this movie. I'm very positive on this movie. This is one of the most entertaining films of the year, where in my mind, Deadpool and Wolverine, it is a great experience for fans. It's a great celebration of the Fox Marvel franchises that is just kind of able to tap into that same vibe as Spider-Man No Way Home, where it takes even movies, franchises, characters that weren't loved when they first came out, and it makes you love them more than you ever loved them before. That's what this movie does so very well. And also, unlike Deadpool 2, which was a 2-year turnaround, it was so quick, and that was some of the issues here, this is a movie where they had a long turnaround and had the time to figure out what they wanted to do and what would create a movie that audiences would absolutely fall in love with. And that's what happened. And thus they gave us a movie that was just like a special event for the fans. Where, and we haven't gotten to Hugh Jackman returning, but he's just so good in that role, so loved in that role. And he's able to be in this very silly movie that's basically a parody of itself and bring so much gravitas. The scene where he roasts Deadpool fits perfectly into the movie that you're watching, but he brings so much dramatic weight to it in a way that Ryan Reynolds isn't able to, because Ryan Reynolds, his special gift is that he's always kind of winking at the camera. It is that irreverence. And Hugh Jackman brings that sincerity, and it just elevates the entire experience to be something really powerful. All that said, is much as it works on an emotional level, a nostalgia level, an entertainment level, I'm not crazy about the story here. It's very simplistic. It is essentially the plot of an episode of Loki season 1, just stretched out and with more fun cameos. Loved seeing Blade. Loved seeing Gambit. And every one of them. I loved seeing all of them. Just they found the perfect odd mix of cameos to put in this movie. But yeah, like on a script level, on a MCU mythology level, I don't know how it all adds up or makes any sense. But you know, at the end of the day, a movie's job is to entertain me. This movie put a big old grin on my face. So big win and success, and it earned the right to make truckloads of money for everybody. Speaking of irreverent, crass, R-rated movies, that is not what The Passion of the Christ is. This is a really tough one to rank on this list for the very obvious reason that it is a deeply faith-based film. That for people of faith, it is a movie that taps into something so personal that it's tough to just evaluate it as a film. So it fits into a very odd place in this one. In particular, it's very silly when you're literally talking about 2 Deadpool movies that make jokes about beating this movie at the box office. And it's irreverent, is at the core of what it is. And then Passion of the Christ is a movie that its central concept is utter reverence to people of faith's figure. They're our God in flesh. As a Christian, that is my belief. And so it's a weird ranking. It's a weird placement. So I didn't even know where to put. I didn't even know how to rank it amongst everything else on here. It's a weird one, but it is a film that it's not one that I regularly rewatch. I know there are people that watch it every Easter. I'm not one of those people. I've seen it a few times over the 20 years since it's released. It is a movie that is very much a very difficult experience for people of faith to observe it because it so captures the physical suffering of Christ. And that's very much a spiritual experience for people of faith. But it also does do just a tremendous job of being such a it uses a film in a way that so few movies do. There's a lot of movies that are entertaining. There's a lot of movies that are dramatic. There's a lot of movies that make you laugh. There's a lot of movies that make you think. This one taps into a spiritual experience that, like you said, there's very few movies that do what this movie does for people of faith. How do I rank this amongst it? I don't know. So it's kind of right there in the middle. But having only seen it a few times, it's still a very profound experience for me. And heading in a completely different direction, It 2017. And it feels very weird sandwiching Passion of the Christ between Deadpool and Wolverine and Killer Clown the movie. But it is what it is. When it comes to it, I just thought that this movie was so effective at being this coming-of-age story with kids that feel like real kids, that joke with each other the way that kids really joke with each other, that go exploring the way that kids go exploring, or at least the way that kids used to go exploring, the way that I used to go exploring with my friends and playing around, having little adventures, while taking this idea of clowning the sewers that is, what is it, paradimensional demon, whatever he is in the actual mythology, and having legitimate scares. Pennywise can be so creepy but charming, funny while off-putting. Like, just, it's a very interesting mix that for me absolutely works. And so I went in having not seen the miniseries, having not read the book. This was my introduction to the world of It, Pennywise, and all of this, the Losers Club, all that stuff. I just thought it did a fantastic job. It's like so effective on multiple different fronts, that it's not just scary, it's not just coming of age, it's not just any one thing. It's a lot of things and seamlessly merges them together. And that's when I think you have a movie that is very effective. Coming in at number 4, we have Joker. Point of reference, the top 4 on here are all like kind of this. All 4 of them are movies that have come out. Well, one of them didn't, but 3 of the 4 are movies that came out during the history of my YouTube channel. I believe like all 4 of them would have been movies that would have been in my top 5 the year that they came out. And they're all such very different movies. Even though 3 of them are comic book movies, they're such wildly different comic book movies. So top 4 on here, different day of the week. The order's gonna be different. As for today, Joker's coming in at number 4. Prior to Joker 2, it might have been higher on the list. I think Joker 2 hurt the journey of Arthur quite a bit in what it did with trolling its own audience. But at the same time, I thought that if you're going to do a modern day riff on Martin Scorsese and Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, this is a really interesting way to do it. And in an oversaturated comic book genre where we get plenty of comic book blockbusters with CGI fights, good guy with cape, battles bad guy in cape, skybeam, garbage spinning over the city, the thing that we see over and over and over again. And they found this interesting other thing. Like, what if you did this Martin Scorsese-inspired look at the Joker and treat that as an origin story for him? I think that's fascinating. And it's not like Martin Scorsese-inspired 70s movies is an oversaturated genre in the year 2019 and then put a Joker DC skin on it, and you just get this great character study where the central character is played by one of the great actors of our time.
All I have are negative thoughts.
And you just get a movie that cuts through the noise. It stands out. It is a movie that wasn't afraid to step on toes in many different ways. And I was one of the ones who was on the side that, of course, loved the movie, hence its placement on this list. So for me, just in a genre that I love so many movies, watch so many movies, and so many movies are coming out, it's a film that found a way to do something different while still kind of being familiar, but feeling wholly on its own, and its great character study, its own great commentary in its own ways. So totally dug this one, pulled back a little bit because the sequel made some odd choices. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all of these movies. My list, not the right list, just my list, and I'd love to see yours. I've done a number of these videos where I ranked the highest grossing movies of several different genres, comic book movies, 50 movies that have made $1 billion, fun stuff like that. I'll have some links somewhere around here. You can check out all that fun stuff if you enjoy videos like this. In third place, Deadpool, a movie with just such a fun backstory that that they put Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool in X-Men Origins Wolverine, and it was not good. Like, it was like such a bad interpretation, while at the same time they cast the right person. And they, not just because he could pull it off, but he also loved the character and wanted to do it right.
I mean, my dream would be to do an absolutely 100% faithful Deadpool adaptation, straight out of the comic books, breaking the fourth wall, pop culture references, the whole 9 yards, knows he's in a movie, knows he's in a comic book. Right. You know, that kind of vibe.
11 years I've been trying to get this movie made. And, wow. We had a script, we did that about 6 years ago, then we did a little bit of test footage for this movie.
And there's interviews of him when he was promoting X-Men Origins Wolverine, saying that overtly. Like, this is not the right version. I want to do the right version someday. And then Fox didn't want to do it. They wouldn't greenlight it despite there being a script. And then there's this whole thing where the script was leaked, or excuse me, the test footage was leaked.
And then about a year and a half ago, somebody accidentally leaked it on the internet.
Was that you?
Was super crazy.
Was that you?
Oh, no, I have nothing to do with that, yeah. I have nothing to do with that.
Very un-Canadian of you.
Yeah. My mom was like, what does this? The fans got it made. So there's a great story, too, that this is totally fan-driven in every way.
That it wasn't supposed to get out there, and no one has admitted to it. I mean, we all know that it was some version of Ryan Reynolds and Tim Miller that did it, but it leaked, and the internet loved it, and so they made the movie. And it went on to become the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time, and a trilogy of movies where all of them were the highest they were the top ones of their genre, their category, and Fox didn't want to take the risk. Those are the sorts of stories that you just love, like true underdog stories, even if you're talking about Ryan Reynolds. It's tough to think of him as an underdog, but the reason is he was an underdog that turned into the biggest star of the X-Men franchise, the biggest star of R-rated movies. That's wild. I love that stuff. But as for the movie itself, another one that was just a refreshing new film in the genre that was breaking the fourth wall before other movies were doing that. It had this irreverence that was so charming. It had this self-depreciating sense of humor that was endearing.
So I actually think what was keeping them from it was that when you read it, it just was so different than anything else that existed out there, period, but especially within the superhero genre. The difference, the weirdness, the thing that was scary to them beyond just the R rating.
At a point in time where comic book movies were just getting bigger and more outlandish and more bigger crossovers and the world's at stake. And then at the end of the day, this movie's plot, it's just a fairly straightforward origin story, revenge story. Very straightforward, but told out of order that just makes it interesting enough, different enough. We don't have a lot of those, combined with just this wonderful vibe and tone that makes it, once again, stand out. It's not trying to compete on the level of the $200 million MCU films and Avengers movies that were just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It went, let's go the other direction. Street level, revenge. It's a love story in this unconventional sense, and it's so irreverent.
It was the best thing that ever happened to us is that they made us make this movie against all odds. You know, that they gave us the absolute bare minimum. You could never have done what we did in the Deadpool movie with any other director, I think, because Tim Miller is a visual effects artist, so he really squeezed $10 out of every dollar they gave us, and that was a real help to us. And not only that, we get to rely on character. You know?
And that just made it pop. It still makes it pop. And to a certain extent, that's kind of like why maybe even the other two Deadpool movies, I'm not as hot on. I enjoy all three of them, but not as hot on them because it lost some of the charm of the small scale nature of it as they turned into the movies that the original one was counter-programming to. Now, Deadpool and Wolverine is one of the biggest MCU films with the cameos and all this other stuff. And it lost that charm of the small scale that I love about the first movie that makes it pop.
I think Deadpool's world is very charming and small in a way, and I for one, there's a lot of really big epic shit out there. Do we need to compete with those, or did this succeed because it was more relatable and a smaller movie? I kind of think it's the latter.
I agree, and I think actually part of what was so fresh about it is that it was not bloated, and that it could make fun of the bloating of other movies. And I work on bloated movies too, so some of those movies want to be told on a bigger canvas. But this one felt, I think, gritty and authentic, partly because it was not a $200 million movie.
As well as Ryan Reynolds just being absolutely born to play the part. Our runner-up, Logan. And once again, a comic book movie that stands out because it just feels so different. That while it is super comic booky, it also is a dead serious drama. It's a story about death. It's a story about legacy. It's a story about regret. It's such a heavy movie. And half the fun of this is the one that came out right after Deadpool. Both years when they came out as well as on this list, but the one that's so great because it's so irreverent and doesn't take anything seriously. And then you have Logan, a movie that in the same continuity, sort of. I've kind of played around with their continuities with X-Men, but same franchise. And Logan takes its characters dead serious. Like so somber, heavy. And in the genre, it is the best exploration of death. It's one of the most dramatic films in the entire comic book movie genre. And this incredible send-off for all Logan as well as Professor X, and in a lot of ways that franchise. It's the better ending to it than the ones that came afterwards.
Felt we stick the landing, but we did it.
It's so much so that we were like, should they do Deadpool and Wolverine? You don't want to undo this. And I think they found the right mechanism in there to still uphold the importance of the choices made in Logan and find the angle. They found the mechanism. But the reason we were so worried is because it was the perfect send-off for the character. And even I've made videos criticizing the deconstruction of a lot of aging heroes and why of every aging hero do we have to deconstruct them. This is a context where it fit, where you had a character that was always at odds with their hero status, always struggling with their past and their place in this world. And that's the one where you want to do the deconstruction and let's dive into it and unpack the hero and rebuild him in the movie at the same time and remind him what makes him so great. And so just a movie that once again found a way in an era where the movies were getting bigger, and then they make the most personal X-Men movie and the most personal comic book movie, the most somber comic book movie, and one of the best comic book movies. But coming in at number 1, we've got Oppenheimer, and once again, I don't know how to rank these 4 movies because they're so meaningful to me in different ways and have different rewatchability. Of these 3 movies, of course, Deadpool's the easiest one to just toss on and watch it. And in their own ways, they're all important to me. Like Christopher Nolan is, I think, the best working director right now. And I first discovered Christopher Nolan when Memento came out. And I'm fresh out of high school, and this movie, my friend said, the art house movie, apparently at the art house theater that plays backwards. Like, what are you talking about? I don't go see movies at the art house theater. It plays weird movies. And my friend, through this Memento and this Christopher Nolan guy, introduced me to, wait, there's good movies that aren't just about superheroes and action movies and sci-fi and aliens. Wow, my mind is blown. And watched the movie, and it played backwards, and it blew my mind. And I have been a massive Christopher Nolan fan for now over 20 years. And you have this journey. Sometimes when it comes to award season, movies themselves, you tie in kind of the journey you've been on with the filmmakers. And you get to Oppenheimer, and the guy that I think is the best working director puts out his magnum opus that is finally recognized as this incredible piece of cinema. Now, I put out my review, but I think the narrative is the thing that's more interesting to talk about at this particular moment. But, I think it's a movie that is able to make science and Senate hearings captivating. On paper, none of this should be compelling. But Christopher Nolan, being Christopher Nolan, took stuff that's very dry and made an almost billion-dollar film. And I think it's crazy that this movie didn't get re-released so that it could inch out and make it into the billion-dollar. It was wacky to me that they didn't do that. But made a movie that was so popular with audiences while being very smart, very dense in history and science and politics. But this movie comes the culmination of this journey where he wins director, best picture, screenplay, all that fun stuff. And the other narrative in there, Robert Downey Jr., that was one of the most promising upcoming actors in the early 90s and was nominated for Chaplin. And then his personal issues derailed his entire career to the extent that he got fired from being the fourth billed lead on Ally McBeal, a television sitcom. His career was over. And then Marvel takes a chance on him. He becomes the biggest movie star of the last decade as Iron Man. And then the culmination of his redemptive arc. Once again, he's recognized as not just charismatic Tony Stark, movie star, fantastic movie star, but also the best actor. And you just love those narratives. So some of that, which ones, I don't know, what entertainment value versus dramatic versus genre that I love versus director that I don't know. But at the moment, there's just still, all these months later, just puts a grin on my face that there's that movie that fulfilled all of these arcs in the world of cinematic history behind the scenes of the movie. And that they're all earned. They're all deserved. It's a fantastic... And Cillian Murphy as well. So many worthy things. That's such satisfying things because the movie itself was just classic Nolan. That he can take things that aren't the most mainstream and make them incredibly mainstream. So, Mr. Nolan today comes in at number 1. Be sure to share your rankings down below if you like these videos. Check out some of these other ones over here. There's so many, I've done the Christopher Nolan movies ranked, I've done the X-Men movies ranked, I've talked about all these in other places in detail. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Keep talking.